What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And in today's video we're here with a tier list and we're looking at the biggest fraud checks in recent UFC history. That's right, this is an updated tier list because I actually did this back in February after Joe Pyfer lost. But since then, there's been a couple fraud checks and, you know, I need content, so I'm going to do it again because that's what I do here. But the last one I did, I went back and re-looked at it. I was like, I think I kind of got this wrong. I kind of got the definition of the word fraud wrong. I approached the tier list just incorrect, in my opinion, last time. So we're redoing it. We're going to do it better. There's been a lot of fraud checks since then. And I'm going to kind of try and differentiate because a lot of people just chuck out the term fraud check at any time someone loses as like a favorite, or if they're like a prospect and they lose or anything, they just chuck out fraud check immediately. I don't think that's what fraud check means. I'm going to talk about it more, but like in my opinion, getting fraud checked is like you not living up to the expectations or the hypes or like the promise, or not even promise, but like what people expected of you. But then when people chuck it out, I'm going to talk about it more, but when people chuck out fraud check, when you lose to like a top 3 guy, that's not like fraud. Because a fraud, in my opinion, is just like you're like coming across as something you're not. Like, I'll talk about it now. Whatever. Let's get into the video. We're starting off with Ikram Aliskerov. Now, I'm putting him down the bottom because, again, the term fraud check is getting chucked out there way too much for this guy. And in a lot of cases, look, am I saying that he's a top 5, top 10 guy regardless? No. Do I think he kind of didn't meet expectations? Like, I picked him to win, but that was more based off, like, I just had a vibe he was going to catch Rob with something, not because I thought he was better. Like, we've all seen him in other fights look kind of mid on the feet. So to say that this guy was just completely exposed is, like, it's somewhat true, but it's not quite accurate. I think it's overdoing it a little bit, because Robert Whittaker is one of the greatest middleweights of all time and one of the best fighters in the middleweight division, one of the best fighters pound for pound in the sport right now. So to lose to him is not the bad thing, but it's more like the reason why I'm going to say it's somewhat of a fraud check is because to me, to be the first person that Robert Whittaker finishes or KOs in like 8 years or 7 years or something like that since 2017, that's rough. Like, I'm not saying Robert Whittaker's a bad fighter, but he's not a guy that gets finishes. That's just a fact. So for you to be the guy that just got absolutely smoked and ran over by him in like 2 minutes, bit of a bad look. But honestly, people saying fraud for Ikram, I mean, I think he can still do good work, but I was seeing MMA gurus saying that Cody Brundage would beat this guy. I'm like, all right, bro, settle down. Like, you don't need to overdo it that much. I know you hate Dagestanis. I'm not a massive fan of him either, but like, people's immediate reactions are just immediately to overdo it and to overstate, to just blow things out of proportion straight away, and that's why I'm not going to put him that high on this tier list. But let's move on to another fighter. Now, next up on the tier list, Rubelas Despain. Now, this is an actual example of a fraud check, because when people chuck it out, you know, when Ikram lost to Whittaker or when BSD lost to Poirier, that's not when you want to be chucking out like, oh my god, this guy's exposed, he's a bum, he's a fraud. When you lose as a minus 200 plus favorite, as this guy that's heralded as the next fucking Ngannou, this unbelievable power puncher who's just going to KO you and you can't do anything about it, and for you to look unbelievably mid, not even mid, worse than mid, for you to look like an absolute bum against Rubelas Despain, to make you look like a bum against Waldo Cortez Acosta, who is literally just the most mid fighter, unranked. If he went out there and fucking fought Alexander Volkov and got beat up, that's not a massive fraud check. If he got out-grappled by Almeida, that's not a fraud check. But like, Waldo Cortez Acosta had never completed a takedown before in his UFC career. He 30-27'd you on the ground, made you look like a bum. And it's not even like it was 15 minutes of grappling. There was moments on the feet, and you looked shit there too. Your distance management was awful. Couldn't even land a good shot. And you had Waldo Cortez Acosta beating his chest in front of you and literally bitching you, and you did nothing about it, and you couldn't stuff a takedown to save your life. I didn't think this guy was going to be top 5, but I'm like, okay, it's heavyweight, it's shit, they're all shit. You can just athleticism and power max your way to the top 10 at least. But no, he couldn't even crack the rankings, couldn't even crack like the top 20, lost to Waldo Cortez Acosta, who's a bum. Let's move on though to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we've got Mike Malott. Now, I'm going to chuck him in the big fraud check tier because you can't be getting finished by Neil Magny. That's a terrible look. But to be fair to him, he was dominating Neil Magny, was beating him up, but then he just gassed. He's got no heart, no cardio. Actually, no, his cardio is not terrible, but he just gassed, and like, I don't think he even gassed. He just gave up. He's like, what the fuck? Why is this Haitian dude on top of me punching me in the face. I quit and just let himself get TKO'd. Absolutely terrible look from Mike Malott. Again, I did not think this guy was that good, but this dude was like a minus 400 favourite against Neil Magny. Everyone's parlays were already cooked because this card was fucked on picks. No one did well on picks, but people were like, oh, yep, he's a lock. He'll smoke Magny. Magny's not that good. He's a gatekeeper. He's not all that. Mike Malott should beat him. I didn't think this guy was anything special, but I'm like, okay, he should be able to at least beat Neil Magny. But no, he couldn't even make it 3 rounds with Neil Magny, who is just literally known to be a decision machine. And you made him get a finish. Like, what the fuck? Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, Adrien Jannis. I'm going to go and fraud check. Now, this is not like a terrible fraud check. It's not like he just got brutally exposed. But there were, and I picked Font to beat him. So I'm not one of the ones that overrated this guy and then he got KO'd by Font. But a lot of people were picking him. He was a favourite against Rob Font. This guy arguably lost to Davey Grant, I'm pretty sure it was. He's beaten Tony Kelly. He's beaten just absolute cans. And people were thinking this guy's going to just smoke Rob Font. People are heralding him as like the bantamweight Masvidal and some shit like that just because he looked similar. This guy's got some decent boxing and that's it. He gets jabbed up beyond belief. Rob Font jabbed him up, and that's why I picked him. I'm like, Rob Font's going to jab him up or not. I didn't think Rob Font was going to finish him, but I'm like, Rob Font will win a decision easy, 30-27. But this guy made Rob Font look like the most dangerous striker to ever live. Rob Font's not a guy that gets that many finishes. He's got power, but he's not some Ngannou or bantamweight. And then he fights Martinez. Martinez is real good, so I'm not going to fault him for a loss to Martinez. But again, not living up to expectations, couldn't defend leg kicks at all, has nothing apart from boxing, and he can't get his boxing going if you just fucking don't let him. And then in his most recent fight, fought an absolute can, got a quick finish, but even then, he's getting cracked. He doesn't look all that good. So I'm going to say Adrien Jannis has been officially fraud checked in terms of I don't see this guy ever being a top 10 fighter. And I think that's what a lot of people's expectations were, and I don't think he's ever going to meet them. So I'm saying flat out, just bang, fraud checked. That's my view on Adrien Jannis, but could change that view. Maybe he beats another top guy, but I don't think so. Let's move on then. Next up on the tier list is Joe, the Salty Man Piper. I'm going to put him in minor fraud check because, look, did he lose to Jack Hermansson, who's just the most mid fighter ever? Yes. But also, to be fair, Jack Hermansson ain't shit. He's not terrible. He's not very good. And I think a lot of people I think the reason why everyone said fraud checked when he lost this was because this dude was yapping saying he hits harder than Ngannou, and then he couldn't get Hermansson out of there and then got tuned up for the last 3 rounds. And I live streamed this fight, and if you know, you know. I'll leave it at that. Botched. But Joe Pyfer, he was meant to be some fucking massive prospect. He was meant to be a really top-level guy. He was meant to just smoke some dudes. Dana White was high on him. Dana White was promoting him beyond belief. And this guy goes in there and just looks mid against Hermansson, can't finish him, gets pretty much schooled for the last 3 rounds. Yeah, I'm going to put him in minor fraud check. It could go higher. But again, it's a ranked opponent that you lost to. Hermansson's a solid fighter, and it was a 5-rounder, so it's not like you just got dominated the whole time or finished immediately. You just got outpointed and you got out-veteran savvied by Jack Hermansson. So it's not a great look, but it's not the worst look. So yeah, I'll put him in that tier. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, we got Javid Baszler. So I was about to say Fareed. Fareed hasn't been fraud-checked yet. I have a feeling he probably will be. But Javid Baszler, this dude, again, he wasn't heralded as some, elite, top-level fighter. But I think a lot of people are very high on the Baszler brothers. The Baszler brothers, they're nasty, man. You don't want to deal with the Baszler bros. But Javid Baszler, he lost to Ayman Zahabi, the Ariel Helwani lookalike. And anytime you lose to a Canadian that looks like Ariel Helwani, that's not a good look. And it's not like he went out there and lost to Pedro Munoz or Dominic Cruz or one of these guys. You lost to an unranked fighter who's 36 and not all that good. And a lot of people thought these guys are so technical, they're so skilled, they're so well-rounded, and he just kind of looked mid. So I'm going to put him pretty high up there in terms of the fraud check tier. But yeah, let's move on to someone else. Next up on the tier list, we've got Anshul Jubilee. Do not redeem, sir. This is very bad fraud check. Terrible, very bad. But Anshul Jubilee, this dude lost to Mike Braden. You can't be losing to Mike Braden. I'm going to leave it at that. Fucking hell, moving on. Next up on the tier list, we've got Guram Kutateladze. Now, I'm going to chuck him in fraud checks because this dude is still very good. But, Elvis Brenner kind of just bitched you and said, I don't care about your fancy technique. I'm just going to be more durable than you and have more cardio. And then he just was like, okay, fuck you. I'm going to finish you now. Bye. And then Guram, This dude can't stay healthy. He can't get in the cage more than fucking once a year. It's like we got the yearly Garam Kutateladze fight. You know, we got one coming up in August against El Salwadi. He should win that, and then people are going to jump back on the train and act like this dude's a top 5 fighter. You know, the Weasel's going to put him as like the next champion or like a top 5 lightweight fighter in 2026 or some shit like that. But Garam, I think he's kind of mid. He's a button masher. He doesn't really have that much power. You know, he fought Gamrot. Looked good. He fought Demir Ismagulov, you know, lost to Demir. And it's like, oh, I see this Demir Ismagulov. You lost to him, and that's fine. That's just two high-level cliff dwellers, you know. They're going to go at it. They're going to have a good scrap. But yeah, he's still a top 5 fighter, don't worry. But no, Elvis Brenner is not like the best fighter ever. He's not a top 15 guy right now, and he lost to him. So, I don't know. Garam, I just don't think he's met anyone's expectations of like being a top 5 guy. Maybe he will in the future, but as of right now, it's like he's like the lightweight Hamzat Chimaev. He just can't get in the cage. Whenever he does and he gets a win, everyone's acting like he's the best thing since sliced bread, but he just can't do it all that much. So yeah, let's move on to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, Roman Kopov. I'm going to put him in minorly fraud checked because, look, he lost to Anthony Hernandez, and that's not that bad of a look because Anthony Hernandez, you know, you won't hear a single fucking YouTuber not calling this guy the dark horse of middleweight. I maintain, if everyone's calling you the dark horse of the division, you're not the fucking dark horse of the division. I know Lucas Tracy won't stop fucking creaming over this dude, Kopov and Hernandez, that is. He's like, because he loved Kopov so much, and then when he lost, he's like, okay, by the way, it's not that bad. I still say he beats Whitaker, by the way, guys. So I don't know. I think the loss to Fluffy ain't that bad. You know, he got out grappled. His striking's still good, but then he fights Almeida, beats him up in round 1. And then round 2 and 3 just looked mid as hell. Almeida was kind of whooping him up on the feet. He had to grapple and lay and pray for dear life to win against Almeida, who we've been shown that has no takedown defense. So yeah, the fact that this guy seems like a bit of a one-round fighter. He seems like as soon as you kind of impose your will back and like show him a bit of adversity, kind of shits the bed a bit. So Roman Kopov, I still think can be a very good fighter. Still think he can beat guys in the top 15, top 10, but this year, so far, you know, he's 1-1 for the year, but I would say the stock has gone down for Roman Kopov since last year, where he was coming off 3 massive KOs. Everyone's calling this guy the next fucking guy up. He's the best prospect you'll ever see. Best striker at middleweight right now, according to Lucas Tracy. You know, he beats Whitaker, by the way, guys. I'm never going to let people forget. I'm never going to let Lucas forget that he said he beats Whitaker. But, yeah, I think the stock's gone down for Roman Kopov. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up on the tier list, we got Bernard Saint-Denis. I'm putting him in the excusable tier because this dude lost to Dustin Poirier by KO, fair enough. After ragdolling him in round 1, Poirier basically had no moments in round 1. Made Poirier look awful in the grappling. And BSD, I maintain, BSD is the reason why Dustin Poirier was a plus 600 or plus 500 underdog against Islam rather than like a plus 300. And I know he still would have lost and people still would have been picking Islam, but we saw the reason why we're like, yeah, nah, Poirier's not stuffing these takedowns is because BSD made him look like shit on the ground in round 1. And that's the reason. Obviously, then he knocked him out in round 2. But BSD, you know, he did have the staff. I'm not gonna fault him for gassing out in round 2 and looking mid on the feet, because we kind of knew he looked mid on the feet. But I'd say the only person's expectations this guy didn't meet up to was Lucas Tracy. Obviously the other people picking him, they're like, yeah, he's going to dominate Poirier on the ground. They didn't expect him to gas out, so definitely, it's not a fraud check. Like, bro, this guy whooped Poirier in round 1. If you win a round against Dustin Poirier in 2024, you're not a fraud. So people were way too quick to just be like, this guy's a bomb, he's a can. So yeah, settle down. Anyone that was saying this guy's shit, he still beats most guys in the top 15, I think. Striking needs work. Cardio is normally very good, but he had staff. But yeah, BSD, I don't think it's that much of a fraud check. Let's move on, though, to someone else. Next up on the tier list, we've got Shamil the Blob Gaziev. Now, the thing that was fraud checked was not Shamil Gaziev, it was his lungs, because we expected a professional athlete to be able to go more than 30 seconds in a fist fight, more than a round. We expected a professional fighter to be able to actually do well in a martial arts competition in the cardio aspect. But no, Gaziev's lungs were in fact fraud checked. They did give out, they did fail, and he in fact went blind as a result. You know, this guy lost to obesity and went blind. That's tough. Next up on the tier list, we've got Nasultan Ruziboev. Now, guy got fucked up by Buckley and made Buckley. He literally got bitched by Buckley, and then post-fight he was inshallaring on the canvas while Buckley's doing his post-fight interview. You know, people, 6'5", dude, big rangy guy, people expected him to be some I think people saw the Rusev name and they're like, oh, yeah, Oev and shit. And they're like, oh, this guy's nasty. Saw him get a couple finishes and thought he was anything that special. But guy got mid-ass grappling. Striking ain't all that either. It's not like he's that good at range. So yeah, Rusev pretty much fraud checked. Again, Buckley, not a bad opponent, but not some top 5 guy. If he went in there and fought fucking Whitaker again, or like Alaskarov didn't lost, again, not a fraud check. You know, like he can still be a good fighter, but Buckley, not all that, and this guy made him look pretty shit. So yeah, let's move on though to someone else. Next up, we got Giga Chad. Now, I'm putting him in fraud checked because this guy's ceiling has been shown, in my opinion. And now, no, it's not like he's a bum. Like, fraud check can be different. Like, you could be fraud checked and we now know you're not making the top 15, or you could be fraud checked and we now know you're not making the top 5. It's like, this dude was yapping, calling out Volk, saying Volk was scared of him. Meanwhile, you got a fight booked in a week against Cater. Cater 50-45, your ass, little bitch. And yeah, he looked mid. Came back a year and a half later against Caceres, looked mid. Pulled out of the Amit fight. Probably would have won, but yeah. And now he's fighting Allen. He's going to lose. This dude is not cracking the top 5 at all. He's going to be lucky to actually remain in the top 10. I think he's only going to do so because a lot of the featherweight top 10 ain't all that. But yeah, Cater whooped your ass, bro, so that's tough. Let's move on, though, to someone else. Next up on the tier list, Mateusz Rebecki. Now, I thought this dude was going to be a top 15 guy. I was wrong. He got whooped up by Diego Ferreira, got finished in the 3rd. Bad look. Diego Ferreira is a good fighter, but he was a massive favourite, like minus 500. Everyone thought he was going to win. And him and Rebellis, they were the 2 fraud checks of the card. Rizabov too, but a lot of people expected him and Rebellis to both win. They were the 2 biggest favourites on the card, or 2 of the biggest favourites on the card. And yeah, he just didn't look all that good. He's got big, meaty hooks, but he can't really land shots on anyone good with range management. He dropped Diego Ferreira, fair play, but he kind of looked shit apart from that and got beaten up, got his eyes busted up, couldn't see really, and yeah, got fucked up and finished. So tough look for Mateusz Rebecki. I thought he was going to be a lot better. Maybe he could rebound, but for now, it doesn't seem like this dude's making the rankings. Let's move on, though, to someone else. Next up on the tier list, we've got Jonathan Martinez. It's excusable. He lost to Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo's one of the GOATs. I'm not going to fault him. Let's move on. Next up on the tier list, we've got Vitor Patrino. Top tier fraud check. You can't be getting subbed by Anthony Smith, putting yourself into a guillotine and tapping like a soy inside 3 minutes. That's tough. Get out of here, little buddy. You were a minus 500 favourite against Anthony Smith and you let him finish you. You just handed him a win. Like, you're a juiced up Brazilian and you got nothing else apart from that. You're a bum. Let's move on. Next up on the tier list, we've got Ismail Bonfiglio. Now, losing to BSD, not that bad of a look. That's not where the major fraud check comes from. Honestly, the major fraud check comes from beating Vince Pichel. And you might ask, how is winning a fight a fraud check? Because this motherfucker did not fucking finish a 42-year-old Vince Pichel, made him look half decent on the feet, and was just trying to style on a 40-year-old and couldn't finish him. Terrible look. This guy is just kind of mid, I'll be honest. And also the fact that your UFC debut, your win, and the win that gave you your claim to fame was KOing Terrence McKinney. Terrence McKinney's a bum. We know this. Let's move on though. Next up on the tier list, we've got the other Bonfiglio, Gabriel Bonfiglio. Now this guy lost to, he got 2 wins under his belt. He beat some dude, and then he beat Trevin Giles. I forget who the first guy he beat was. I don't know. Who cares? But then he beat Trevin Giles, subbed them both in like a minute, and then he loses to Dalby. Now, he beat up Dalby in round 1, looked great, and then he got TKO. Now, Dalby's actually pretty solid, because Dalby just arguably beat Renat. And we know the Weasel's been hailing Renat as a fucking prospect for years. Probably isn't doing so anymore, because he's not that good, but Weasel's been all over Renat. And Dalby just went close with Renat, arguably beat him. So, I don't think that Bonfiglio losing to Renat, or losing to Dalby's that bad. We're going to see him fight in a couple of weeks' time against Angelusa. Probably should win that fight. But for now, I think you could say fraud checked. I don't think he's that bad. I still want to see him fight some more like top-level opposition. If he loses again to an unranked guy, then yeah, fraud checked. But for now, yeah, I don't know. I'll just chuck him middle of the tier list. Let's move on, though, to someone else. Next up on the tier list, we've got Cesar Almeida. I'm going to chuck him in minor fraud check. Probably should be higher, because to be honest, even though this guy was an underdog against Kopov, but dude's got no wrestling. He's got no takedown defense. He beat Budka, who's a wrestler, but Budka just was awful. He got taken down. He gets taken down every time someone tries. So yeah, I'll chuck in minor fraud check. I don't think anyone was that high on him as a fighter. Like, no one was hailing this guy as like a top 10, future top 10 fighter, but you know, he whooped up Kopov in the second and third, but even getting dropped by Kopov in round one, like, you're meant to be, you're Cesar Almeida, you're the glory kickboxer, and you're getting tuned up in round one. Not the best look. Let's move on, though, to someone else. Next up on the tier list, Sergey Pavlovich. Now, excusable. Now, I want to talk about Sergey Pavlovich because the loss to Aspinall, obviously, is not that bad. Aspinall's the best heavyweight in the world right now. He's better than John Jones. But Sergey Pavlovich, the loss to Volkov was just not a good look. And the reason why I'm saying, like, slight fraud check, I'm putting it inexcusable, honestly. Like, it's not a fraud check, because this guy still beat Blades, Ty, and Lewis. But it now kind of seems like this dude is not going to beat anyone who is that good at striking. Now, there's not many people that are really good at striking at heavyweight. There's not. He's probably, like, in the top 5 strikers at heavyweight, just because there's no one that good. Like, Gane would shoot him up on the feet. Aspinall's going to beat him again in the rematch. Volkov beats him. And Jones would probably beat him. But apart from that, there's no one that good. And I don't even fucking think Stipe had beat him at this point. Stipe's old. But the reason why I'm saying this is just because I think people thought he was going to be the Russian Ngannou, the guy that will just touch you and you die. And he really didn't look all that good against Volkov. Now, maybe it's a one-off. Maybe he goes out there in his next performance and smokes someone, finishes him easily. But for now, it's not the best look for Sergey Pavlovich. I thought he was just the touch of death guy. I thought he was going to be jabbing people and dropping them. I thought he would finish Volkov inside a round. And credit, Volkov looked great, but this guy, like, he's got like a bit of a blitz and he throws some big meaty hooks, but a lot of the time, if you're actually just good at defending punches and not a fat man, then you can just not get KO'd. So yeah, Sergey Pavlovich not going to be the guy to... I don't think he's ever touching a belt. I don't think he's going to be, like... I think he'll always be outside the top 3 of the heavyweight division from now on. Let's move on, though, to someone else. Next up on the tier list, we've got Vitor Walker. This dude lost to Lucas Bershki. Enough said. Again, no one was really hailing this guy as a prospect, but I thought, like, there was a bit of hype around him. A little bit, I guess, you know. He's Johnny Walker's brother. Thought he would be something half decent. Thought he would be good at heavyweight. And no, he's mid as hell. Lost to Lucas Bershki. Gassed out. No cardio. Terrible look. Let's move on. Next up, we got Mohammad Usman. Another heavyweight. Fraud checked, I guess. No, actually, I mean, he lost to Mick Parkin, who's fat, but... he's not really, like, he was never a prospect. We all knew he was shit, but I don't know, I'll just put him in here. Just to even out the numbers, you know, just for some diversity. Not that many black people in here, so gotta chuck him in here, you know. Diversity requirements, otherwise YouTube might ban me or some shit, you know. They'll be like, you're not including enough black people in your videos. You only put them in the bad videos. I'm like, yeah, okay, fine, I'll put them in the fraud checks video. I don't know where I was going with that. Anyway, let's move on. Next up, we got Abus Magomedov. You're talking shit on the back of Abus. Abus Magomedov. Now, the loss to Sean Strickland was not the fraud check. I mean, that was the one to show, like, this dude's got fuck all cardio. He quit. And then the loss to Caio Borralho was just a bad look. He looked mid. And then he fought Wally Alves, who's a bit of a bum, bit of a can. Took Wally Alves to a decision. You know, Ikram finished Wally Alves. Ikram, people are calling him a fraud. You know, Abus Magomedov went to a decision with Wally Alves. Not the best look. Whatever, let's move on. Next up, we got Grant Dawson. This dude might be the biggest fucking NPC on the roster. I'm thinking about doing an NPC's tier list. Let me know if you guys want to see that. NPC tier list. Comment yes or no in the comments for an NPC tier list. But Grant Dawson would be fucking S tier if I did it. This dude is just dead. He's got the most dead style. The name Grant Dawson just sounds dead as well. And, you know, he got chinned by Bobby Green. That's never a good look. He should not be getting finished by Bobby Green. If you get finished by Bobby Green, you're in Tony Ferguson status, little bro. So that's tough. And then, you know, went out there and just wrestled and laid onto fucking Joe Solecki, who's not all that. You got to be finishing Joe Solecki, my guy. He just went to a decision. So, yeah, not the best look for Grant Dawson. I know he's trying to get his wins. I know he's winning most of his fights, but, you know, he went to a draw with Ricky Glenn. But, yeah, the Bobby Green fight was a bad look. And, again, Bobby Green's not all that, and Bobby Green doesn't normally finish guys. So, yeah, you shouldn't be losing to Bobby Green by KO. That's tough. Let's move on, though. Now, last up, we got Jailton Almeida. Now, I'm putting him in excusable because a lot of people, I saw people have done this fraud checks video, you know. Cage Side Convos did it. What's his name? I think Bedtime's probably done a similar style. I've done one before, obviously. People are chucking around saying Almeida got, like, fraud checked. Like, he tossed around Blades, made Blades, who's a, like, qualified wrestler, look shit in the grappling, and then just got TKO'd. Bad look, the TKO part. But, you know, this guy's a cow tipper, you know, he's a fat man strangler. But I don't think that's a fraud check. Like, he tossed around Blades. And honestly, who came out looking really, like, did Blades come out looking good from that fight? No. He just sat on someone's, like, he just pushed his belly into someone's head and TKO'd them. So I don't think it's that bad of a look for Almeida. I still think he's very good. Still think he's a top 5 guy in the future. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Who's got fraud checked the hardest in 2024? Do you agree with my tier list placements? Go follow my Instagram, Left Lane MMA. Subscribe, like, comment, all that shit. Bye.